Hey there, everyone. Before we start the show, we here at Popcorn for Dinner want to give a big shout out to our good friend and illustrator, Kyle Kedzik, for helping us celebrate making it to 40 episodes with some brand new custom artwork, which is now up on all of our social media accounts. We love it. We hope you love it. And if you're looking for some new custom artwork for your business or project, you can look him up on Facebook at Kyle Kedzik, or even drop him a line at kylekedzik@gmail.com. That's KYLEKEDZUCH@gmail.com. Everybody, welcome back to Popcorn for Dinner. This is Jeff.
And Kelly.
Scary movie month is moving right along, starting with the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, and now finally here in week 4, we are in the 2000s.
The aughts.
The aughts. And if there is anything that the aughts are going to be remembered for in the annals of horror history, is torture porn and Japanese horror movie remakes.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, we'd both seen Saw. We actually did Saw for one of our first episodes. In last October, one of our first movie episodes was Saw.
Mm-hmm.
We've both seen The Ring. So it kind of came down to like the second tiers of each, you know, where in that case, it's like if Saw is the first tier, then the second tier was probably like Hostel.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the J horror remakes, you got The Ring as like the topper one. So this week we are doing the 2004 supernatural horror film, The Grudge. Like I said, we had both already seen Saw. We'd both already seen The Ring.
Mm-hmm.
This one, movie I had seen, you had not.
I had not. No.
Had not.
The Ring was actually the first horror movie that I went and saw in theaters with my friends.
Nice.
Like without any adults.
Yeah. It worked? Did it work on you guys?
Some of the people in the group, yes. I was not as affected by it.
Okay.
For whatever reason it was. I don't know.
I mean, sometimes just different styles of things just hit people differently. Where it's like to some folks, they'll see something and it's crazy spooky, and to someone else, they're like, that's the funniest looking thing I've ever seen. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't work sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely like I was scared in the moment, essentially, but it didn't have like a lasting effect on me.
Yeah, there were no lingering
Not like fucking Zombieland of all fucking movies.
So in terms of seeing it for the first time, obviously you are much less susceptible to its wiles, you know, as an adult woman and not like some little teenager going to see this in a movie theater. 'Cause 2004, I mean, I was 15. You'd probably be 15. Not that young, like not so much that it would be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But it would still probably work its magic if indeed it did hit that for you. Because like for myself, I recall definitely having at least like a couple of weeks of not like full on terror or like nightmares or anything, but definitely those feelings of like, because I was living in the basement at that time.
Yeah.
Like that was my bedroom, was the basement. So like coming up from the deep dark basement or going down into the deep dark basement, like there would definitely be little moments of like, oh, I don't know, that face, you know, like, oh, it just like pops into your head and everything, and it, you know, gives you a little bit of like a uneasy feeling. But it's not like I was sitting there like, Kayako is coming for me, she's coming down the stairs. Like no, never to that extent.
Yeah.
But it definitely, you know, it was just the way that it was put together as a horror movie. I was able to appreciate certain bits of that on this viewing, but it like 1,000% did not hit any of the marks that it did when I was younger.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. If I had seen it closer to when it came out, I have a feeling that The Grudge would have definitely hit and lasted longer for me than The Ring.
Yeah, I mean, there's some distinct things, because like as much as they are very much similar, like I think they're called Oinyo or something. I forget. I saw it in some of my half-assed research. But like just the like traditional like long black hair woman or girl Japanese ghost, like that's to them what, you know,
it's like we have like woman in a white dress,
exactly,
sort of
that
thing.
kind of stuff. Like it's just the cultural thing where it's like that's what's spooky and that's what gets to people. And it definitely crossed the ocean to me. Like it worked. It wasn't something where it was like, why do they find this so spooky? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just, it is in fact like a sort of inherently creepy thing. But it does do some things very differently than The Ring does in terms of like sort of ghost powers.
Yes.
That probably helped make it so affecting as a kid, but then watching it now makes it just like infuriating is too big of a word. But just like annoying, I guess is a close enough word for like the true feeling. But it's like in terms of like a story and watching a movie, like I've come to grips with the fact that most like ghost movies are never truly going to scare me again. Like not even in like a "'cause I'm so tough" kind of way, but just it just doesn't. It just can't anymore. Like as a kid, I was probably more susceptible to it than most kids, but it did not grow in the same ratio as I did, or like it dropped away, and it just doesn't really work anymore. So it's really more of a case of like watching it as a almost study of like how do they go about getting their scares, like understanding how it works and knowing that it did indeed work on me at a time and therefore worked on probably lots of people at the time. I mean, it was a relative like hit movie.
Yeah.
I think it said at opening weekend it grossed 39 million, which was the first time since what did it say here? House on Haunted Hill in 1999 to like top the Halloween box office of it actually being like a scary movie, I guess.
Nice.
Which is like such a bummer.
Yeah.
That all
really
those other
is.
years that there's some other movie that's taking the crown during October. Like, come on.
Scary movie month. Come on.
Yeah,
If
that's
you do
literally the
one
point,
thing.
you idiots.
God.
I definitely noticed a lot of stuff that like, it's not that I didn't notice it as a kid, probably. It's just that like, I'm assuming that the scarier parts working so much on me distracted me from how borderline confusing this movie is.
I have so many questions.
Like the
can we just should we just get into it so that we can try and unravel this?
We definitely
madness?
can. Like I understand. Like most of my things are not even a question of like what is happening in the movie, because I already knew ahead of time kind of how this thing plays out. So I'm very much interested in the kind of questions that you have in terms of seeing it for the first time and not having its like haphazard editing kind of masked by the fact that you're like sitting there like, oh, I hope they give me a little bit of break from the scary. Like, I hope it's not too scary right now. Where instead you're like, okay, that was a spook moment. I got that. Yeah. Moving on to the rest of the movie and watching it with such like a sort of sober eye. You know what I mean? You're not scare drunk.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely excited to hear about that. I mean, I don't even know exactly where to start. It's so weird to see the beginning of a movie and be like, this isn't where anything is starting. Like, what is going on? Oh my God. That was such a random spot to start. Like, I especially in retrospect.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, like, I understand wanting to start with a hook.
Start with a bang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, something like is going to keep everyone asking, like, what the fuck just happened?
Right.
I get that. But this was so fucking random. Like, there were so many other little things that they could have shown for that first opening little bit.
Yeah.
And then come back to.
First person you see on screen is Bill Pullman. And you're like, oh, here we go. And the first thing that he does is throws himself off his balcony and kills himself.
Yeah.
And he is dead on the ground. And his wife has the strangest non-reaction I've ever seen in a movie. Like you'd think,
It
like
was
obviously there's different ways people react to stuff, and some people just like go into shock,
yeah.
or their reaction isn't as big as a movie might make you think. But the fact that she literally is just like looking down at his corpse, like like no,
Like
no screams, no like
no crying.
no crying, no nothing. Literally just like you sort of expected this to happen.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, today's the day he does it. Like that's so grim. But yeah, like knowing ahead of time, like I realized I really wanted to like hear how you kind of how you experienced the storyline of this movie, because in my head I was like, I know that this goes somewhere else, and that there is in fact more Bill Pullman in this movie, despite the fact that he just killed himself.
That was confusing as fuck. I was like, it's awful. The thing that I remember him for is the dad in Casper.
I mean, that's a perfectly respectable Bill Pullman role.
But
it's the fact that it's Bill Pullman.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that had been,
I know that actor at least a little bit, which is a lot for me.
Yeah, but it's like clearly this is someone that we are meant to like. You don't get Bill Pullman for the one scene, no line of dialogue, kill yourself moment at the top of your movie.
Yeah.
So the fact that he does it, like if you're not expecting that this movie plays with time as much as it does,
You're just so like confused.
Why? Yeah, I'm sure you're just sitting there like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why did he do that? Another thing that I definitely remember from seeing this movie is that despite all the things that work for it, that moment always got a laugh.
Him tossing himself?
him just over the thing, just because it's so absurd. It's out of nowhere. It's the very beginning of the movie. I completely I normally hate people who laugh at horror movie stuff, because it's like, just fucking deal with yourself. If that's how you react to scary movies, maybe don't go see scary movies and ruin it for everybody by laughing the whole time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or if it's like, oh, it's a nervous thing. Like, well, you know what?
Try and keep it to yourself.
Yeah, try and fucking hold it down. Like, I'm sorry, but it wrecks it.
Yeah.
But that moment, top of the movie, no explanation, Bill Pullman just like, well, and over the thing. That's absurdity in its finest, and it is hysterical. And it definitely it sets a weird tone for the movie where you're like, okay, so that was supposed to be like horrifying, but also I don't know anything about what just happened. Also, it was kind of funny. Like, what are you getting at, movie?
Where are we headed?
Yeah. Also thought it was funny just before that scene when they're doing I don't even think there were opening credits. It was just the screen with titles where they kind of just explain the concept of this like curse.
Yes.
Where it's like, when someone dies in a fucking rage and blah, 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 tied to the place, and the curse does whatever, and et cetera, et cetera. I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Like, I was wondering if maybe it was done because it was like a thing in Japan. You know what I mean? Like, this kind of thing is like is that we all know shorthand.
Yeah.
So we kind of need to explain it to you guys. So we're going to give you this kind of real quick before the movie, not even a voiceover, just some words to be like, this is what we're dealing with. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And then later the detective describes it anyway. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Then what did that matter then? Why'd you need to give us those titles? I did like a lot of stuff about it in terms of transferring it from Japan to America, though. Because every other Japanese remake was you just grab everything and you set it in America, and now it's the story, and it's in America now.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so fucking cool that they set it in Japan.
Yeah.
That they didn't just drag it over.
They took the Americans and put them in Japan.
Exactly. Instead of taking the whole movie and making it American, which is cool too, because the people who play the family of ghosts are the same people who played the family of ghosts.
Oh, that's
in
fun.
The original movie.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like they kept those people because it's like, hey, those are your roles. Because the director is the director. I don't know if you noticed that in the opening credits, but like the guy who wrote and directed the movie in Japan directed this version.
Gotcha.
So that is also really cool.
That is.
And he mentioned that he liked the idea of it. I feel like I should fucking say his name. Takashi Shimizu. He liked the concept of doing it because it was like, oh, I can like fix some of my mistakes. Things where I watched the movie and I was like, oh, I could do that better. And now I get a chance to do it again. Like, that's fun. Like, that's a really cool like concept.
Yeah.
And considering that the original movies, again, half-assed research, but considering that the original movies were fairly low budget, it made a lot of sense in retrospect, because I had like a billion notes about this, but I was like, they are wringing the fuck out of this exact set scare setup of like someone coming in the front door of this exact same house and coming up the stairs and wandering down the hall and going to this back room and all, like, almost, I think there were like 3 in a row that was literally basically the exact same thing over and over again. But I was like, oh fuck, if this is kind of really based on that original movie, and if it is indeed as low budget as it sounded, then it's like, that's kind of an ingenious way to be like, we don't have a lot of sets.
Yeah.
We need to use
we
this
got this
set.
one house.
Yeah, we got a house, and fucking we need to get like 5 or 6 different sequences out of it. A couple of them are going to be the same. And so doing it the way they did, kind of like, it was like, oh, that's actually ingenious.
Yeah.
In retrospect, that they did it that way. But there were times where I was like, I am wondering how confusing this is for Kelly right now. Watching these same people go through the exact same motions in the exact same set at times that were indeterminate sometimes, where you were like, wait, when?
Yes, it was a roller coaster.
It's a tough movie to kind of talk through.
Yeah.
Because once you know how all the things happen, at least to me, I forget how the movie presented it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, I know what happened before.
It starts with Yoko showing up.
Getting lured to the attic, essentially.
Yes.
When it was happening, I was like, oh my God, is this movie really going to do it? Like, I thought, I was like, it might be affecting me, like, for real. Because I got just that like little bit of like settling in the stomach when she's just looking at the ceiling, and then you hear the noises and you track it along the ceiling, and then you hear the like, what thump right behind that slightly open door. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant and terrifying. And it's like right there, and you know she's going to go for it. So my God, I was like, is it working? Is it really doing it? And then when she goes up with the lighter and like the ghost attack happens, I was like, oh, that didn't work the way that it did before.
Damn.
Like I still love, I made a note of it because of how much I love it. I love the fact that her face is back there before they do any kind of like, you know, she's like up there with the lighter, and then you can just kind of see
that
back
was
there.
spooky as fuck. Yeah.
Like that is an affecting image. And that's sort of what the movie kind of does best. It has a lot of great horror movie images.
Yeah.
It's not a particularly great story. And unfortunately, because of the way that it's told, like how chopped up it is and how much you go from like one timeline to another timeline back to the first timeline. Sometimes you don't see Sarah Michelle Gellar for like 30 minutes of the movie. And you're like, I thought she was the lead character in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, hold on, because we got to go back and we got to see Clea Duvall and her husband. And then we also got to go back to fucking the sister of that guy. And, you know, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute. Oh, right. Sarah Michelle Gellar. Right. She's a character. You know, they don't really give her enough screen time for her to be like a, you know, I did not give any kind of damn about Karen.
Yeah.
Her character at all. The only reason I gave any sort of damn about her is because it's Sarah Michelle Gellar. And she's like adorable and perfect in the role. And just like, you know, she seems very like sweet and innocent.
Yeah.
And she always has had that vibe, which has worked obviously very well for her.
Yeah.
It's like she has a boyfriend. She works for the school she goes to. She goes to a school, but
she goes to school and she's working at a care center.
Right.
It's like an in-home care sort of situation. I think she said something about it being like a social justice credit or something.
Okay, that's
lines.
what it was. It's like she's doing it and she's getting credit for school. It's not that it's through the school.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then that's kind of it. That's all. That's all there is. And there's no like, what is she like? What are her dreams? What is?
Yeah.
You know, it's like nobody cares.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. That's not the point of that. The point is the spooky ghost faces and stuff, and the spooky ghost noises. I guess I got to just bring that up. What did you think about the spooky ghost noises?
So I knew about the whole clicking,
the croaking, like death rattle noise.
Because at one point in my life, I was able to make that noise like on command. I haven't tried. I'm not gonna on mic because that just might blow everything up. but I knew that existed.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the usage of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously there's a lot of other weird noises.
Like the cat noise coming out of Toshio.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
That was a little unsettling.
Mm-hmm. I liked certain bits of it, like the way that it's set up is done really well. And I loved the fact that like she goes to that same house. Finally, something connects. Because I noticed that. I was like, this is, from a storytelling standpoint, the fact that it's like, okay, so there's Bill Pullman and his wife, and then he kills himself. Next scene is Yoko showing up at this house, goes up into the fucking attic, sees Croaky Face, and gets grabbed and pulled up into the attic or some shit.
Yes.
Then Sarah Michelle Gellar and her boyfriend hanging out, and then they go walking around, and I was just like,
that's where my first question came in. Was, do these stories have anything to do with each other?
Yeah, I realized I was just like, yeah, this is just complete nonsense, like, as far as anybody knows right now, because of how just absolutely dissimilar all of them are from each other. And it was just like, what even, like, I know what's happening. You know, like in the end, I know the story, even if there's little bits that I had definitely like forgotten about or whatever. But it was like, I know the general gist of this, and I know that they're all out of order, but why do they seem so unrelated? Like there's nothing between them. Yeah. So finally, Sarah Michelle Gellar shows up at the house, and you realize like, okay, so, well, also because she talked with Ted Raimi. Alex, the guy who works there, who's like, Yoko didn't fucking show up for work today, and it's like, oh, because she got, okay, so this is after that. Okay, I finally found my place a little bit.
We've got a timeline.
Yeah, we're slowly working there. And so she gets sent to the house to check out the lady, and I liked that the ghost like used the cat noise to make her open the door.
Yes.
And it's one of the things that drove me nuts during the movie in terms of like ghost powers. What are the rules? I don't like it when horror movies with like super, I guess, supernatural things don't explain rules, because it's like, then what the fuck are we doing here? How can anything ever be won or defeated or fought against if they can just do anything whenever you want them to at any point in this story?
Yeah.
It's kind of how they work in this movie.
A little bit.
So it's a bit of a bummer. But I was like, okay, so if for some reason, despite all of the powers that they've shown, this ghost boy can only make cat noises, then that's brilliant. To use your cat noise to get her to reopen the door to like let you out. But that's the issue I have, is like, did they need to be let out? Can't they just get out? Can't they just like apparate through walls? Were they actually trapped? I didn't understand that at all. And I was like, just because she from just walking in this house, she's cursed. Yeah. Based on the curse, the way that they explain it. So it's like, so there's no need for her to like go all the way upstairs and open a door and see Toshio. Like she could have just literally walked in the door and been like, you know what, this is weird, I'm going to leave. And she'd be cursed too. Yeah. So it doesn't matter. But then as it goes on and on, you sort of realize like, did they even need to be let out? Is that what was happening? Like, were they truly trapped?
Unless it was the long con to like make her call someone.
Oh, and bring more people in? Yeah, I mean, I guess that could be a thing. It's like the ghosts just had good sense of how to set things up in a spooky way without it needing any sort of actual like rational explanation for why it was done the way that it was. Because like there's like 3 timelines that really come together. Yeah. And then one hysterical tiny little fourth one that pops up towards the end that I wrote a note about because I thought it was just really funny considering how much flashing back they do in this fucking movie. But essentially the original timeline is that Peter, Bill Pullman's character, is getting like shitloads of letters from this woman who like was in his class, I think. Yeah. Like a student of his, from what it seems to be. He's getting a bunch of letters from her and she's like obsessed with him.
Yeah.
And he goes to her house to like talk to her about it or something. I don't even really know.
Yeah, I guess just confront her about it.
Yeah, just be like, hey, can you stop sending letters to
Yeah.
me every single day?
Yeah.
And he kind of gets tricked into the house
Yeah.
because the boy Toshio is like hanging out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what the fuck are you doing over here? And then the kid like goes back inside.
Yeah.
And then that causes him to just barge on in. And I was like, doesn't seem like enough
Yeah.
to me to be like, I need to enter your home now. It's like, hey, look, there's a boy and he's inside the house right now. It's just that his arms are like kind of hanging through the slats around the window. And then the kid left back into the house he ostensibly lives in.
Yeah.
Like that, none of that invites you into their house.
Yeah. No, not at all.
That was weird. But he goes in anyway and he discovers that the husband of this woman, Kayako, discovered her journal full of love notes and shit and pictures and things. And in a rage, he fucking murdered her and their son and the cat and then hanged himself in this PG-13 version.
Yes. Because
I realized that it's like, okay, I saw this movie like once in theaters probably, but I used to own, and it was a gift. It wasn't even something I bought myself. Like, oh, I fucking love this movie so much. But I had the unrated cut of this movie.
Okay.
And I realized while we were watching it towards the end, I was like, oh yeah, okay, there's a tiny little thing missing here. So you know, when for some reason Sarah Michelle Gellar is back in time and watching what is happening, which was another thing that was just another fucking thing to throw at you right at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Because what we're talking about, even though it's the first timeline, happens right at the end to sort of show you like the mystery of like what had happened here.
Yeah.
Even though they mentioned like a billion times that it was like a murder-suicide. So you know something terrible happened here.
Yeah.
You just didn't see the specifics of it. And you didn't understand how Bill Pullman was involved.
Yeah.
But when Bill Pullman opens, when they hear the thumping on the wall and he pushes the door open and he like sees what's in there and stumbles away. And then Karen steps in there and looks at it and is just like, oh my God. And you see like kind of just like way in the foreground, you see his body like swinging past the camera. And then you see the shot of like his feet suspended in the air, hitting the wall. So you understand like, oh, he's hanged himself. Most likely if he killed everyone, then he hanged himself or whatever.
Yeah.
What the PG-13 version doesn't show you is that in that room, essentially he killed his wife, Kayako, and she immediately turns into a demon ghost lady.
Oh.
Because he did not hang himself. It's her hair coming from the ceiling that has wrapped around his neck and hanged him. So it's like she killed him after she was dead, like in, being a rage ghost. And I was like, oh shit, they didn't include that part in this one. They just show it like, since I'm assuming it's just too gruesome to see like the body hanging there. So they're like, okay, we'll use the close-up shots that you can't really see anything.
Yeah.
And we'll just move along and we'll kind of forget about the whole hair noose dealio.
That's insane.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of a bummer because that was a fucking awesome visual of just like, holy shit, she fucking killed his ass. But he discovers all of this, Peter, Bill Pullman's character, and essentially just fucking bolts. He's like, oh my God, this, like, he didn't technically have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
As far as any of the story is concerned, it doesn't sound like he reciprocated to her at all.
Yeah.
She was just obsessed with him. But then to just show up at the house and be like, hey, can we clear things up, guys? And everyone is dead.
And you are now cursed.
Yeah, it's like, unfortunately, yeah, he was then cursed. I assume that's why he killed him. I assume he probably like saw her face or heard her or something in the time between leaving that house and throwing himself off his balcony.
Yeah.
They just don't show any of that because it's like, yeah, who cares? So that's the first storyline.
Yeah.
And then like... apparently, several years later, did they say like 3 years or something? I feel like they mentioned a few times.
Yeah.
Like, those murders 3 years ago, whatever the hell it was.
Something like that. 3 years or 6 years. I don't know.
So several years later, a family moves in, like a husband and wife. The husband's mother, who is like suffering from dementia or something, starting to suffer from dementia, whatever.
Yeah.
They move into the house. And the ghosts don't seem to waste much time with them. Like, there's not much like, oh, and then there's a spooky thing that happens, because it's literally like the wife doesn't like it. Clea Duvall doesn't like it.
Yeah.
She doesn't like being there because they're in Japan and they're American and whatever.
Yeah.
There's that little moment, which I thought that scene between them at the table talking about like, oh, what happens? I got so lost and I feel so alone and whatever. And it's like, we'll move home if things don't work out. Like, I'll tell them to get a new accountant and we'll just move back to the States. And I was like, oh my God, we're getting so much character out of these people. Like, they get all the character and they're the ones who wind up dead like practically immediately.
Yeah.
And fucking Sarah Michelle Gellar, it's like, I don't know anything about her. So they get fucking haunted by these ghosts because they're in their house. And practically like immediately it's just like the ghost boy knocks those noodles off the table. And then the next time you see his wife, or does she chase something? I'm trying to think now. Does she have a scene up the stairs? Doesn't she also go up the stairs and look for something? And then something pops out at her?
She was following the footprints from the
right. And then
water.
She sees the cat. And then the boy's arms come out and grab the cat.
Yes.
And she says, who's there? Like,
Yes.
who is that? And it's like, who does it matter? You know, it's not anyone that you know.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. Like, is there any answer that could come back from them that would make you go like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I guess
Jeez.
her sister-in-law?
Maybe. But those are like tiny little pale arms. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then but whatever.
Then
some
she
sort of
goes
ghosting.
like comatose.
Yeah, some sort of ghosting happens, whatever. And then when the husband gets back home, she's just in bed, practically comatose. And then he also gets attacked. And then the scene is over. And then we cut back to like the future, because that's the end of their storyline, obviously.
Yeah.
And then we get to Sarah Michelle Gellar's storyline now. The third thing of people like entering this house and getting cursed by dead people. And she comes in. She, sees the boy. She untapes him from the door. She calls Alex to be like, hey, shit's going on. For a second, I was like, why didn't she call the cops? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, she's in Japan. Okay, I guess it would make sense for her to call the one authority figure that she knows speaks English to help her out with this. Then she sees Kayako, the ghost lady, as she comes down from the ceiling to like do something. To the old lady.
Yeah, because Karen was in the room with the old lady.
Yeah.
Emma.
Yes.
Everyone has such just a bland, boring, like average name for all of the white people.
What was the boyfriend? Doug?
I think so.
Good old Doug.
Yeah.
I actually wrote in my notes, I was like, Doug, you moron. Later into the movie. But she sees the fucking ghost and it just like looks at her and then apparently kills the old lady. But it was another form of that, like, what the fuck do these ghosts do or want? Why was she just stared at? Like, why did she get both like a spookin' from the little boy and then also see the lady, but neither of them killed her. And she's fine for the most part and just goes home.
They can only kill one at a time?
I don't know. It just seems silly where it's like, what are your plans, ghosts? I don't really get it.
I don't know. I'm sticking with long con.
I guess.
I don't know.
But then
someone's gonna call about the old lady being dead now.
Yeah. But then the detectives show up.
Yes.
And I liked them more than I probably like most American movie detectives. You know what I mean? At the very least, because of those dope gloves they're wearing. I love that so much. It makes so much goddamn sense. I don't understand why it's not more common practice. I mean, maybe it even is more common practice, but I don't understand why they don't ever show it in movies, because I think it's great. Those like white gloves be like, yeah, we're touching fucking crime scenes.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we be wearing something?
Yeah.
They seem classier than the like rubber latex gloves or whatever that most people use. It's just like, no, well, these are my fucking gloves. Like, I take them home, I wash them.
Yeah.
They're mine. I got them fitted. But they show up, and later I don't even understand why the one detective ever came into this house ever. Because like while you're watching it in the timeline that like you know of, you're like, okay, so he came to this house because he was called. Lady was dead. They're searching around. They find the bodies of the previous couple in the attic, which apparently made that scene only like the way that the things came to and the information came to us. I was like, that was yesterday compared to this day that Sarah Michelle Gellar is in. Like, I thought it was way in the past. Like, I thought it was like, a year or something, or maybe, or half a year, a couple of months. But the way that it like turns out, it makes it seem like they get fucking murdered by ghosts stuffed into the attic, for like whatever reason, like to hide them. If the ghosts can just like move people around and put their bodies in the attic, then move the phone that leads the detectives to your attic. You know what I mean? Like, they leave the phone in the attic so that the detectives find it and then find the corpses.
Yeah.
And it's like the only reason the corpses are stashed up here is if you're hiding them. If you're hiding them, move the phone.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you're doing. That's what I mean by, like, they know how to make it set up to look like a scary movie, but their plans don't actually make any sense.
Yeah.
But, like, that all happens. They find the jaw on the floor. Like, oh, who did that belong to? Like, oh, shit, you find out later. And it's sort of horrifying.
Yeah.
But then later when he's talking to fucking Karen, that lead detective guy is like, yes, I know all about the house and those murders and my 3 colleagues and my good friends who investigated this house, and then they all wound up dead and they are cursed and I am cursed now and oh, it sucks. And it's like, then why did you go in? Like, once you got called to that house, like if it was just like, hey, we need to send a detective to this house, and you're sitting there like, oh, my friends died going into that house. And then you realize what house you're going to. It's like, I am sick. I need to go home. Like, find a reason to not go in the house. But he's just like, all right, I guess I'll go in there and get cursed too.
I guess honor.
If that's the difference between me and the Japanese version of me, then I'm glad for it. That I will not just step into an evil cursed house because honor.
Because if you don't, someone else is going to get cursed. Well,
it's the American way.
Yeah. No. Screw the other guy.
Yeah. Seriously though, that fucking detective, like, I liked him a bunch. Like, I thought he was like a good actor, and he, did his shit well. What I did find funny, I wrote a line of dialogue for him because it didn't seem like he had enough lines of dialogue. Because there's that scene where, he's looking at the videotape.
Okay. Yeah.
The security footage, and then those fucking eyes pop up on it. And for one, I wrote there, I was like, that would be enough for me to just quit the force, straight up. If it was like, oh yeah, you're investigating something, here's watch this videotape, and some ghost lady apparates out of the floor and then pops up in front of the camera, and you see her like demon eyes staring at you, I'd be like, well, I'm done. Yep. I don't ever want to be the person who gets called to any kind of disturbance ever again. If this is what awaits me. Horrifying. But at one point he goes back to his desk and he pops it open and he starts looking at the pictures of his friends, of all of his like dead cursed friends. I just wrote down, I keep a stack of pictures of my dead friends in my desk just in case I need a quick bring me down. Like, that's what it feels like, man. Like, look at, they're all dead. Like, it seemed odd to me. Like, what a weird thing to have, especially just like, I mean, I guess in the days before digital camera work, that in those times it would make sense to have us have physical pictures. Yeah. But just like a loose stack.
Yeah, not in like a book.
Just in your desk, like. It was weird to me.
Not even in the like envelope that they come in when you get them developed.
Exactly.
Like, that's like the basic. Like, it comes with that storage.
Yeah, don't just leave it loose, you lunatic.
That's how they get wrecked.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and then it's just a case of like, and then everyone who walked in that house is cursed. So all the stories converge because he goes there to burn it down. And Karen's boyfriend goes to that house because she just left all day and never got in touch with him again. Yeah. I was like, that is so your fault, Karen.
Absolutely.
When she gets home and she checks the answering machine, because he apparently called back home and left a voicemail for her because they didn't have cell phones. I thought she had a cell phone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He at least had a cell phone, I guess.
Yeah, but I'm like almost 1,000% positive that she had one in a previous scene. And then it was just like, what? You just didn't have it? He didn't call it? What?
Yeah.
It's not 1990. It's 2004.
Yeah.
Cell phones. Come on. You're in Japan. Come on. So yeah, when he leaves the message for her and he's just like, "Did you go to this house? I'm gonna come find you." And she's like, "Oh no, he's gonna go to the house and get cursed." And it's like, "Yeah, you idiot. You apparently left all of the tabs on the computer open to your murder house research. You just left it all laying around for him to find, and then you just went fucking AWOL all day.
Yeah.
What do you expect?" Like, that was very dumb of her. It was also dumb of him, though, to just be like, "I'm just going to go into this house."
Yeah.
You know?
Like there's crime scene tape.
Yeah.
Like, just stop.
Yeah, it's like sometimes, like, I mean, personally, I always find it kind of cheap, and I think they only used it like maybe once or twice. The like something someone in any like logical sense should not be doing, but they do it because the ghosts like tempt them or trick them with something. You know what I mean? Like her opening the tape because the boy's making cat noises.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that's not necessarily like she's doing something she absolutely shouldn't. But it's like, oh shit, somebody taped a cat in this closet?
Yeah.
Like that sucks. So her doing it is like, I get it. It makes sense. But the idea of like, murder house. I saw all the fucking paperwork on the murder house. Also, more people died here. Also, there were even more corpses in the attic. Also, there's police tape all around it. I'm just gonna go in anyway.
Yeah,
like I don't.
Seems safe.
Yeah, totally. I know at one point they used like a kid crying to get. That was with the detective. That I was like, do not fall for this.
Oh, I was so mad.
Right?
Oh my god.
He waltzes into the house with 2 big fucking jugs of gasoline, and I'm like, burn it down.
That
burn it down. Like, just do it, dude. You're the like most brilliant person in a horror movie ever.
Yeah.
Who's just like, you know what? It hasn't even really truly come for me yet, as far as anyone has seen. But I'm just gonna nip this one in the bud and burn this fucking house down.
Yes.
Like, yes, dude. And
burn it.
Yeah, and then he fucking gets in there and you hear the sound of like a kid crying off in the distance and he stops and he goes to investigate.
Yeah. I
was
literally
like,
wrote,
dude.
I was like, no, you know it's a trick. Burn it.
Yeah, it is fucking ridiculous that
It's
he
a
fell
trick.
for it.
Damn it.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. And then fucking Sarah Michelle Gellar shows up and
then winds up in the other storyline.
Yeah, goes back in time and watches Bill Pullman and then comes back and then the ghost lady comes at her one last time and then she burns the house down.
Yeah. Well, she finds her dead boyfriend.
Right.
It got okay, so
it did get confusing there.
It actually, parts of it kind of reminded me of Oculus. The way that it was like fucking with what she saw.
Oh yeah, her perception of what it was and everything.
And I was like, okay, that I can appreciate because, you know, I dig Oculus. And it's definitely a mind fuck. So I, wasn't like turned off by some of the oddities.
Right. I mean, do you mean like when she's like, oh, and she looks towards Doug and then it's Kayako instead? Like that kind of thing? And
to an extent, like her like being in the like other storyline, sort of like seeing that storyline that seemed like, messing with her actual like visual and perception of like what's going on.
Yeah, I mean that was to put it lightly, that was one of the defining moments of like, what are their powers? Are the ghosts doing this? Are they showing her the past to like explain themselves?
Yeah.
And then murder her anyway? You know what I mean? It's like there's no, I guess that's it. It's like you kind of couldn't anyway because The Ring totally already did that, where it was like, oh, we'll help her. And then it was like, no, it's not help she wants. She's evil. She's going to do, you know what I mean? So it's like, you couldn't necessarily do that again.
Yeah.
And have it be like, these ghosts, they need redemption. They need, they need to finish the business.
Yeah.
And then they will finally be free. It's like, no, they're pretty much evil whole time, just looking to kill. Yeah. That's the whole point. And I kind of like that. It's a little refreshing where it isn't like, oh, I need to save her. Or something. It's like, no, they're fucking evil. They're going to murder everybody. But it did just make it seem like, okay, why show her this then?
Yeah.
Why not just fucking attack her? Like she clearly, it's just confusing. But I will say there were several really good scare sequences through this movie, at least in terms of like how it was built, and even some of the imagery still, despite not being like super duper scary anymore, at least it's pretty fucking creepy. Was there any specific sequence that kind of stood out to you as like, oh, I liked that one?
I don't know. There were so many were like sort of similar, just based on like the fact that most of them took place in the same house.
Yeah.
The one thing that I did write a note about that did make me jump, and it was, of course, the dumbest thing. It wasn't even like a scare.
Oh.
It was when Alex, right, is the...
Yeah, the guy who works.
When Yoko, well, he didn't know it was Yoko, but when she was like walking through the building past him and down the stairs, and he slipped in her blood, the squeak of his shoe made me jump. I was like, are you kidding me?
But see, I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that just means that like the tension of the scene had built up enough that something released it. It just happened to be the squeaking of the shoe. Like, oh, jeez, like, my goodness.
God.
Yeah. I mean, I like that sequence to a certain extent. Other than, again, their powers.
Yeah.
Like, so they can rip her jaw off and she can just survive for a few days and wander around back to the place she works at. Is she alive? Is she possessed? Wait a fucking second. How in the fuck? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And then especially like right after that, it's like, so what happened to him? And it's like,
we
don't go back to it. Yeah, we don't go back. It's just, he looked at her. It was scary. And then we just move on. And you just assume he's probably dead.
Yeah.
Just kind of goofy. But
I think they say something about that later. They like, someone along the line like says that Alex and Yoko are both dead.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because Karen goes like, and it's like, yeah, well, I mean, duh.
Yeah.
I was a little bit bummed out by how little the stairs sequence at the end got to me now, because that was like anytime I would watch that movie, that was probably the part I was dreading the most, because it was affecting as fuck.
Is she a contortionist?
I believe if not the actress who plays her for most of it, then I think whoever does that sequence.
Okay.
Because just from what I was reading is that they did it like without special effects as to how she moved.
Okay.
So it's like maybe
it
she
looked
is
practical.
Yeah, for certain. And it's just like creepy and creaky, and obviously it became a kind of trope in horror everywhere of the like moving and stuff. But it's like, fuck, dude, it's because it worked.
Yeah,
it worked real well. And then couple that with the fucking noise, and also just like there's just something unsettling about that like open mouth, wide-eyed face.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's just creepy to look at. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. Probably my favorite of the jump scares that I knew was coming and it still sort of got to me was that bus one where she's on the bus with Doug and she's like middle of the sentence and she just like turns and looks at the out the window and there's a reflection of her face coming at her. And it's like, oh man, movie. Like, it's great because it doesn't telegraph it at all.
Yeah.
There's no like, oh, there's probably some spooky coming up. But you still feel like an asshole for being like, oh, hey. That's not fair. Yeah, you. There were a couple of the spooky faces that worked on me as a kid that were a little more laughable now, unfortunately. Like, basically, like I loved the concept of it, and that's why it bummed me out at how much I hated how it looked. But at the very end, she comes down those stairs. It's pretty creepy. She like crawls up to Karen, who then like turns and goes and opens the door. And then in the doorway, her face is there and like kind of comes down at her. That looked really cheesy to me and kind of cheap and almost like a mask. I don't think so. I'm pretty certain that was an actual woman's face, but it didn't work the same way it did on me as a kid. And I was just like, oh, darn it. I was waiting for that. Like, oh, and then she's it looked kind of cheesy to me. But then there were other ones that were really fucking good. Like that first one with the lighter in the attic, where it's just like waiting in the darkness, and then all of a sudden there it is.
Yeah. And then also just the suspense with that scene of like she's lighting the lighter, looking over here.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's looking over here. Like
Mm-hmm.
when is she going to see it? Because you know she's going to see something.
There's no way she won't.
Oh.
And then you kind of see it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what kills.
Yes.
That's a good one. But honestly, I think in a similar way to I Know What You Did Last Summer, where it has like a definitive, like, oh, that was actually a really good moment or a really good sequence, is the sisters haunting.
Yes.
Or she's at work and then she hears it in the stairwell and like the lights above keep going out and looking down, she's crawling up.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, that's crazy. And then it just keeps fucking going.
Yes.
And going, and she gets fucking home. And then her brother quotes, because we know he's dead at that point. But her brother calls to get buzzed in, and she does. And then the doorbell rings a second later, which is excellent. Of just ooh, that's unsettling.
Yeah.
Only thing is, I wrote down, I was like, did she just buzz in the ghost? Does it need to get buzzed in? Like, can't it just show up here? Like, considering where it shows up in a couple of minutes, it seems insane that it needs anyone to buzz it in. But the ending of that whole sequence is so good and so perfect. And it's one of those like, fuck you to the movie makers of like, come on, it's almost unfair to place like the ultimate scare at the end of this big long sequence under your blankets.
Yes.
Like, that is so fucking unfair. It's like the refuge of the scared teenager watching the movie is under the blankets, and then you make the scare under the blankets. It's brilliant and it's diabolical, and I love it. Like, it's such a wonderful thing. Like, the fact that it doesn't work on me anymore means I can now more appreciate how like deliciously devilish it is to just be like, oh yeah, and later tonight when you're spooked by this movie and you want to get under your blankets, nope.
Sorry.
Yeah, my bad. I thought that was the fucking greatest thing in the world. Like, oh, that's fucking good. And the fact that like you sit there and for a second you're like, oh, please no. Because like she gets into the blankets and you're like, okay, this could be going a lot of different ways. And then she pulls the rabbit's foot out from under the blankets that had gotten taken by the ghost earlier. And you're like, no, don't you dare. And then ghost in the bed. So great. But then immediately though,
sucked into the void.
Well, that's the thing. Ghost powers. Like what? Some people get murdered. Some people just get sucked off to the nether realm. That sounds bad. Some people just get pulled off into the net. That also doesn't sound great. Some people just get dragged into the nether realm. And are just never seen again because they even show later that the detectives are just like, she's just not there. Yeah. And the door was locked from the inside, so I don't know. And that's it. And it's like, well, where did she go? Does she go to like a worse place than just death? Everyone else gets to just die, but she apparently, who knows, lives forever in agony in the ghost world? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Ghost powers.
She's in
they
the
don't
bad
make
place.
Sense. She's in the sunken place. But yeah, I mean, honestly, overall, as much as it like kind of gave me some fits in terms of like, man, what the fuck does any of this mean in terms of like a full on story? Like if you put that movie in chronological order, it's not very compelling.
No.
It lives and dies by the fact that you don't know what's going on most of the time.
Yeah.
Until you sort of piece it together later. Like the fun of it is the fact that it's a puzzle. It's just that the picture at the end isn't anything special. It's like, oh man, that was a fun puzzle. I wish it was more than just gray, but oh well. But I mean, overall, I did still sort of enjoy it for like a pulpy ghost house movie. Just like, it's got some spooky ghostness.
Yeah.
It's got some like decent actual scares, even if they're not quite as hard hitting as they may have been in the past. And as confusing as it very well may have been several times. Like I said, honestly, there were certain times that I really enjoyed sitting and watching it just because of the fact that they were in Japan.
Yeah.
Like looking around at it like, hey, this looks different.
Yeah, right?
This is something that isn't like every other goddamn horror movie in the world. Similar to like I Know What You Did Last Summer. It was like, just put in a fishing town and all of a sudden what's old becomes new again. Like the ghost movie, like, set in Japan, who gives a shit? Like, oh my God, you're right. It's great.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? But yeah, I think my favorite little like bit when the flashbacking power of this movie is no longer enough for how hard they're going to flashback, and it cuts to how he killed his wife and cat and son, and just the fact that it's like we flashback like 5 times in this movie.
Yeah.
All these timelines, we flashbacked as hard as we can flash. We don't have any more power anymore. So these last bits are just going to be black and white and kind of sketchy, and there's no dialogue really, and it's just there. Just take it, please. Our final flashback. Like, we can't flashback anymore. Don't ask us to. Don't ask us what happened before this.
We've backed as flash as we can.
Like, it's just, it was really, really funny to me. Unfortunately, because the moment is supposed to be like horrifying. Like, oh my God, look what he did. And I was just like, oh, the flashback machine. But I think that is going to wrap it up for our popcorn for dinner this week. We got one more week in October for Scary Movie Month. We still have not necessarily concretely decided exactly which movie we're going to do. We got a lot of choices, surprisingly.
Yes.
There's a lot of movies from the 2010s that are like sort of classics that we have already seen plenty of times. So it's a little bit tougher, but we got a couple of choices, and we're hoping to end Scary Movie Month 2020 on a strong note.
Yes.
But
hopefully with something that actually scares.
We'll see. Like I said, I don't expect it, but that would be neat. But that's going to be it for Popcorn for Dinner this week. This is Jeff.
And Kelly.